Hello, everyone. This is Melina and
Jordan.
And we are the Board Certified Baes.
Yeah, we are.
Today we have our first guest.
Yes, we do.
Hey, y'all.
Seamus.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Bestie that goes way back. Known you for a very, very long time, so I definitely appreciate you being here and being a part of this.
Oh, yeah.
First guest.
I, again, appreciate it so much, you guys asking me to be on, especially as the first guest. I am very honored.
Yes. Well, don't worry, this might be the first, but it definitely won't be the last.
Nice.
So, with that, if we just jump in like we normally do, how is your intro? Like, how would you consider your intro? Like, what would you want us to say? And I know this is like odd and different because we're not introducing you, but being the person that you are, we want to hear your experience, your way of describing yourself, and putting it out there for our listeners.
Well, you two know me as Sheamus, but
Very true. Very true.
when I'm introducing myself to others in a, let's say, just a very standard, standard situation, it's just I introduce myself as Sheamus. Sheamus O'Hara, if you really want to go the full first name, last name route. If I am going to be talking about something along the lines of like, when I'm talking about autism and neurodivergence, I really appreciate if people refer to me as autistic. So identity first language. I'm big on that. A lot of the people in the autism community and a lot of the neurodivergent community do. But as always, you should ask, and just like you guys did, which is much appreciated. So in certain contexts, though, because I'm not just autistic as well, I have ADHD, OCD, and Bipolar 2. I also identify as neurodivergent, and really depending, if I don't want to be a mouthful like I am now, I will just say I'm neurodivergent. And if people are a little more interested, which I'm always fine with, I'll tell them more specifically, I'm autistic, whatnot.
I'm so sorry.
Salute.
My bad.
That's all good. I thought I was going to be the first to do that. But yeah, I think it's really situation and context based that I do it. Sometimes I'm feeling a little more, I'm just going to say autistic. Sometimes especially if I'm around others who aren't autistic but are neurodivergent and, the multitude of ways you can be, I will, to be more inviting and just so other people feel they're amongst someone who is that, I say neurodivergent. It's really situation based. But as always, it's good to ask.
That's good. I mean, I definitely agree. I think leading with respect and understanding first is a lot better than coming with assumptions and,
absolutely
lasting that way. It's already a problem. It's
definitely, even still to this day, I will occasionally slip up with others, which, I'm human. I'm still on a journey myself. I am not perfect, and I will occasionally slip up, but I usually am good at catching myself really quickly, correcting, and then moving on rather than just dwelling on it. But no, it is a respect thing, like you said. Yeah. Like, we all deserve to, be called and identified how we identify as, especially when it comes to labels, which could be a touchy subject.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're in a day and age where there is such an emphasis on that wasn't there before, right? So that is it's a good thing, but it also brings like some trouble to it as well in like different ways.
Absolutely.
Right? So you've got people that self-identify without going through the process, which can we've talked about that in the past, right? Where it could lead to
it's valid,
problematic stuff as well, and then also just having people not being aware or choosing not to do that is where the downside is. So it really highlights society as a whole and the attitude that they have towards people that consider themselves different in whatever context that may mean for that person.
No, absolutely.
So, cool. Well, again, we're so glad that you're here, and thank you for telling us that. So we're going to do something a little different this time around. We're going to do a mini series within the season and break up our time together so we can keep our times short. And we'll highlight some key topics and talk about them and have some in-depth, genuine conversation, because that's what this is about. Giving you the floor to talk about the things that you want to and how you want to talk about them.
Awesome.
I think that's really important to share, because you have a wealth of knowledge and you have the experience that a lot of others don't have. And being all the things that you've done, you've helped a lot. I know you've helped me with my view of things and helped shape some of the ways that I do therapy and work with individuals in general. And so I appreciate that, and I'd love to get into it. You got anything you want to add?
No, I'm just really excited to have you on. I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm excited to hear, just like your knowledge, your experience, opinions, all the things.
Yeah, me too. And I'm going to love to have a really nice discussion with you guys about it.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully help others see some things maybe they haven't seen before, or hear some anecdotes and whatnot that might give them some perspective.
Yeah. I think like the conversation that we had off camera a couple of days ago about just this series and what we're trying to do is being so different. If we can just touch one BCBA or one, RBT or behavior therapist to help give them a different perspective to look at things.
Oh, yeah.
The impact on, the number of kids or adults that receiving services may feel, which I just think is so impactful.
Absolutely.
That just one individual or one podcast, one episode can have that effect. Right. So with that said, let's dive into the very first question that we have is like, what was your experience growing up? To piggyback on that, at what age did you realize that things were a little bit different?
Yeah, that's great place to start. So growing up, I grew up in a large family. At first, though, it was my parents and then my younger brother and I for the first 7 years of our life. I received a formal autism diagnosis around age 5. I was in kindergarten. It was about a month or two. I remember this. A month or two before I turned 6. So it would have been around actually this time of year, like almost 30 years ago that I was so close to that when I got a formal diagnosis. I remember being told and having zero idea what that meant. It wasn't until about 2nd or 3rd grade, which developmentally, a lot of kids around 2nd or 3rd grade are going to kind of be a bit more cognizant of their social surroundings in a more, I don't want to say nuanced way, but in a way that up until then they haven't had before. Kids start to become more aware of their peers and their differences a little bit more intensely. I noticed that both with the other kids I was around and within myself, also being kind of told that, hey, you are mildly flapping your hands, you're fidgeting with your fingers a lot. A lot of intense, deep interests in one or two things and very little interest in other things. The one thing I did have was I wanted to be social since I was really little, which for a lot of people listening, I know a good chunk of you know that, there are a lot of autistic people that are naturally very social butterflies. And there's other people that might think autism is more in that box of not wanting to be social, and then y'all soon learn that I'm just one person with autism, and I there are some things that I am spot on autistic, and then others I mask very well. But around, I would say 7, 8, 9 was when I started to really realize I definitely am a lot different cognitively and developmentally than my peers. I went to private Catholic school, kindergarten through 12th grade, so I didn't really, I wasn't in special education. Academically, I was pretty much right where I needed to be with most things. Reading was the one thing that my mom, and my speech, was when that is how my mom, who was an early child educator, thank God she caught that really early, that she knew that I might have some type of, I don't know what you would call it. It was the 90s. So I know she said there was something socially and developmentally different because she was a preschool director. And I was reading by age 2. I was speaking at age 2 at a 4-year-old level, which was not typical. So I was a little bit of a jibber jabber. You guys know this.
Like,
but,
nah.
But it was really 7, 8, 9 years old, like I said, where I could tell some kids would give me little stares sometimes when I would, engage in stereotypy, mostly physical stereotypy, or if I would do like echo what they said in the way they said it, echolalia. I mean, when I got into ABA, a lot of this was like, oh my gosh, that's what it was. when I'm learning all of these like keywords and phrases in ABA, it's like, oh, there's a name for it. But yeah, it was definitely around that age where I started to slowly understand who I was at, that young of an age, with what little I still knew about autism. All I knew was something that made me do certain things over again. I was really intense. And then I was told that I didn't pick up on social cues very well, which was true. But try and tell a 7, 8-year-old, you're not picking up on social cues very well. What are they going to do with that information?
What does that even mean right now?
Like...
So, yeah, that was definitely my upbringing. And then when my second youngest brother was born, a few years after that, at age 2, he was diagnosed with regressive autism because he was speaking and then was mute and then no longer, and then was able to speak again a little later, but developmentally delayed. And that was also enough to awaken my mom to where I would get an ADHD and an OCD diagnosis around 7, 8. So that kind of completed the neurodivergence package for me, because oh boy, I was a very rowdy kid. You could not get me to sit down and focus for too long. But yeah, growing up with that was interesting.
So one of the things that you said in there that I thought was like that kind of stood out to me in like your story, and I appreciate you being so honest and open and transparent about it, is you got told early. Early on. I did. And a lot of families that I've had contact with will worry about that position of like, do I share it with them? And this starts at young ages. Yes. through in the older years of is it appropriate? And I get that question quite often, and I'm sure that you've received that question as well. How do you feel in that standpoint, being told so young, and then having the experience as you grew up? Like, did it help and you had somebody to go to and talk about it? Or was it like, did you still feel like you were navigating that path alone?
Great question. I want to preface that by saying, I got this diagnosis in the late 90s. So still a bit of a wild west of a time.
Sure.
Being that, my parents, even my mom, who, again, probably one of the, I'll preface in a preface, being a male, white child, like boy, in that time was way easier to get a diagnosis than say you were a woman, BIPOC, any of that. So I was very fortunate to have that, and I recognize that, especially now more than ever, being as they didn't know as much in the 90s as we do. Gosh, in the last 10 years alone, it's just exploded. I mean, we live in such a good day and age for having these discussions and being able to like have a bit more of an understanding, I really want to emphasize that I don't think there's a right or wrong time to tell a child. It's so dependent on so many factors. Mm-hmm. It's also a really good conversation to have with their pediatrician if they have depending on the age, if they have a psychologist they're going through. Some BCBAs I feel are going to also be really good resources for that, especially if they've been in this field long enough, had these discussions, and they've seen good success, altogether. But as we all know, not every BCBA would be qualified to give that, like, you know what, it's a really good idea if you look at this, this, or that. Sometimes a good BCBA will say, I'm not the right person to ask about that. Sometimes a BCBA is. It's a complicated answer, but it's ultimately the family's decision. Depending on the child, too, you may be able to be more open and upfront about it and say, hey, you have what's called autism, or you have what's called ADHD. And does that make you, does that still make you Elijah? Pick the random name there. Yeah, that is a part of you, who you are, and that's okay. And there are a lot of other people like you, and it's going to only make you more who you are. Mm. And then there's going to be some kids where that might not be it depending on some things like trauma and whatnot, that might not be the right time. I would just say, for any like parents who are going through this, or any one of y'all who knows somebody who's going through this, really have a conversation with your team, with whatever that may be. If it's school, people at school, BCBAs, and you guys can come up with plans together. It's also okay to maybe ask. I know this is gonna get some eye rolls from some people. It might be okay to sometimes ask people, without using specific names, on things like Reddit, on autism forums, and hear from other parents and see, ultimately parents are going to do what they think is best, and they shouldn't be judged for doing it with the good intentions, and with their child's safety and autonomy at heart. So,
ooh. Yeah, I have a question that's kind of,
please.
Well, I don't even know if it's a question, but it kind of is connected to that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of friction, I would say, between parents now that have children on the spectrum and adults that are autistic.
That's correct. Very true.
What do we do with that? Like, is it we need to have parents be more flexible and open to the conversation, but then, like, because it's two completely, and I don't even know how to ask this, you know what I mean? It's just like two completely different experiences, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about, though.
Yeah. Do you have anything about that? Like, there's just this, I feel like there's two extremes right now that are heavy.
Yes.
And valid on both ends. But then there's also a lot of, like, lack of listening to both sides. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes complete sense, because I and we might get into this more later on too, but I used to be way more extreme on that end as an adult autistic. Just, like I said, I've had a lot of time and been in various fields related to this where I've seen different perspectives, and I carry a lot more nuance, and I present with a lot more nuance than I once did. So again, both sides are valid. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of adult autistics who carry a high degree of trauma, such as myself. That depending on what they went through, be it if they had really rough, just difficult childhood at home, school, ABA, OT, speech, life, it's all of that can either be a net benefit for them, or it could be horribly detrimental. Nothing is free from that criticism or that potentially being a harmful environment. But with adult autistics, getting into the fray with parents with an autistic child, it really comes down to, for, let's say, on the parent side, I would always recommend that they do listen to adult autistic voices for reference. And I really mean as a reference to help them come to a decision on their own, not as the be-all, end-all. Yeah. Because you ask a lot of adult autistics who've been through various situations, therapies, schooling, what have you, they're going to all have different anecdotes, answers for questions, and there's going to be some crossover, but I don't think parents should be literally at the whim of adult autistics' opinions on things if, say, they know their own child, which you would hope they would, but I give pretty much most parents the benefit of the doubt. You know your child better than anyone, especially their autistic symptoms. You, as a parent, really should take the opinions, not with a grain of salt, but with an understanding that what they went through, those adult autistics, is valid. But then kind of think, but are you my son? Are you my daughter? Are you my child?
Right.
You don't want to take like my opinion on, I could say my parents fed me these foods and I hated it, made me hate food and everything, yada, yada. You should never try to give your kids the food if they don't like it the first time. It's like, no, that's some kids might just be like, not today. And then the next day, I'm just saying that parents should really come to their conclusions based off of professionals, their own experiences, education through, I would say read, watch podcasts, listen to conversations, and then also autistic adults, and take what might be an effective or potentially effective thing and utilize it, but you also don't have to.
Yeah.
But I also will say, parents, do not turn down the experiences of autistic adults either. You do want to understand that you are raising a future adult who is autistic. And that's going to really be more prevalent once they get closer to like 18. Some of their children might never be able to be on their own completely. Yeah. And a lot of them good chunk of them are going to eventually, leave and do their own things. Like, I was one of those people, and there's a lot of things in retrospect that I have heavy criticism on, but working with families, working with autistic adults as well who don't have families, and that they're their own guardian or their own conservator, what have you. It is so nuanced, and I really don't like seeing the division like this. Yeah. But it is understanding of why there is. Yeah. I think both sides have complete valid concerns. Parents especially do not have it easy, and their children don't have it easy, but that's why we have teams of people now to help get us. So we have people like you that are trying to work with not just the children, but the families at large, to take these resources and say like, hey, why don't we try this? This seems to have really good effect with a lot of adult autistic people who give glowing reviews of this product or this method or this way of discussing things. So I don't know. I feel like I could go an hour on that topic.
Thank you.
No,
it was a really it wasn't. I don't even know if it was a question. I don't know.
No, but it was a very in-depth thing that I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people need to hear and kind of understand. And 9 times out of 10, I think we've talked about this too before. Like I'd say 9 times out of 10, people and parents will do things for the best intentions, but execution might not always be the way that it's needed or was intended to be, right? So like that kind of also creates that hiccup with, and we're coming from a place that that there is no rule book, there is no guidance, there's no education to how to be a parent.
Nope.
We have how we were parented, and how we were parented, if they did that today, it would be troublesome.
Considered child abuse in some cases.
Exactly, right? And so like we go through this evolution as human beings, as society, as what's appropriate and what's not appropriate now. And I think a part of that kind of goes into it too, just like you were saying. To take in all the information, but you as a parent know your child the best, and try and work with that. And again, be okay. I think that if the execution wasn't as you desired it to be or as perfect, you're doing the best under what circumstances that you have,
Yes.
and what resources. And there are so many resources, but they're not all made equal.
Yeah.
Some people are going to hate what we're doing, and I think that's fine. That's their opinion. Some people might love it, but I would say that we're doing this with the best intentions.
Yeah.
But that could be seen differently, depending on point of view. And that's not to make it about us, just as an example of the way things that evolve and how we change a society.
And that's a key thing, is we have to be constantly evolving. When we discover new things or new methodologies, new ideas, we need to be open to, at the very least, entertaining the thought of these ideas. Might not apply it, but it is also a good, a lot of the best ideas were thought about and kind of stewed for years and years before it could be developed into a more functioning methodical sort of approach. So just parents, be open, but also know you're doing your best. And don't let the adult autistic community, the ones who are only negative naysayers, just deter you. Like, be good parents, and the best thing you could do is try. Just try. And if anything else, you can at least rest on those laurels and say, I did my very best, and I really gave my child everything I could with what I had. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
I think that's great. There's been times like when, and more so in the last couple of years, I'd say that when I'm doing assessments and things as a BCBA, and parents come and I ask them, what have you seen about ABA, or like what it is that we do? Like, tell me all the negative things, and let's have this open discussion and talk about it. I think it's important because, one, parents didn't really sign up to not know anything, right? And if you Google one thing, it's like a treasure trove of good, bad, ugly, helpful, hurtful. And like, how do you sift through that?
Yeah, and you usually find the answer you're looking for, no matter what you're asking.
Yeah. Especially if you have a bias or you're leaning towards
something.
There's always
way.
something you can find on ABA that's going to just be like, see this. It's like, but ABA has come a long way, guys. For anyone that's like getting it, it's come a long way.
I just want to say one thing to just add to that, and then I think we can kind of wrap up this part. But I think that's one thing that I struggle with too, is that people say like the history of ABA is rooted in dark. Yes, 100%. But so is everything else in the medical field.
Yes.
Like, let's talk about OBGYNs, right? Like, so much of that is rooted in racism. And Absolutely. A lot of the surgeries they performed were done on women of color. things like that. So I think
drugs even back
yeah,
in the day.
Sterilization.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard because yes, very true. But that's with the whole medical field, and it's interesting that people don't often cover that piece as well.
Yeah, psychology you could add to that. Look
Yeah.
back to like Freudian theory.
Psychiatry, education,
Yes.
especially ABA is under the same scrutiny.
Yes.
Or if it's not, it needs to be under the same scrutiny as education, OT, speech, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all of these things have net benefits that that research has shown can provide effective treatments for symptoms, but it needs to be evolving
Yes.
and then recognizing its
Yes,
pasts and its follies.
so that we can make sure we don't repeat history in that way.
Right, but
Absolutely.
good point.
And one of the big things that goes into that too is like how many like cancel culture, right? Just thinking about cancel culture as a whole, and take it one step further. Of we're in the day and age of technology, and everything, instant gratification is a thing. Everything is at your fingertips with a phone. Not like every other, you know, historic event or medium, right? Talking about psychology, surgeons, you know, neurology, all that sort of stuff. They figured all their stuff out when you were basically sending a pigeon. Right, like maybe not that long ago, but you were
were still
calls,
draining
newspapers.
bodies of blood to rid them of their ailments.
Yeah, right. Like things were different. We are in the technological age where this is horrible. Let's put it online.
Yeah.
Right, but you know, I know we talk about this with like Yelp reviews. Like for every negative one, there is like 10 like positive ones that didn't get posted because that was the expectation.
Yeah.
Right? The expectation was I'm going to go to this restaurant. I'm going to have a good meal.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied. I go away. You go there. It was horrible. I'm going to blast this place.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's true with a lot of, you know, there are a lot of good doctors out there. There are a lot of great BCBAs out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you won't find as many reviews on all the positive things that they're doing. And that's just the day and age that we are with culture. You know, bad news travels fast.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good place for us to wrap up this episode.
Absolutely.
You know, there's so many good nuggets that you gave us in there, Seamus. I appreciate that. I think there's so much more that we could touch on just in this short time. And we'll save that for another episode. But for now, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.